Hey gamers, today we're going to look at Lewis and Clark. Let's check it out. Alright, to set up this game, what you're going to do is each player, and this is for 3 players here I have it set up for, is going to put their little player pawn here. They're going to put the little camp marker here in St. Louis, and oddly enough, this is the only time that they'll all be on the same space. You'll have all your resources here. I only put out a few here, but you'll have wood, fur, equipment, and buffalo, which is meat basically in the game, and you'll have them there in those spaces. You also have your white cubes here, which represent horses, your blue cubes here, which represent canoes. You'll have Indians over here, depending on how many players there are in the game, depends on how many Indians there are out here in the pool here. You'll place one of those Indians right here in this little Indian player spot. You'll take these tiles and put one here and one here. There's just 2 separate types of tiles, so you put 2 separate stacks there. And then you'll take your game deck playing cards, shuffle them, and deal one out here. Now at the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle these out, place them out anywhere, but then put the 1s here up to the 3s up here. Put them in that numerical order. After that, it doesn't matter how they come out and what order they come out. Just a setup, you would start with the lowest number here to the highest number at the end. I should mention that this game comes with these little tokens here, where if you run out of one of these resources, I can imagine where that would happen in a 5-player game. Basically, you would just put 2 of your resources back and then put 1 resource here and designate it as a 3 times there. So they have these tokens in the game. Again, I've never used this for a 4-player game, but I can imagine as a 5-player game, you could run out of equipment or, pieces on the board. They also have an alternate thing here. As you see, you're traveling around this river and these mountains here, and these little tokens can change mountain spaces to river tokens or river tokens to mountain tokens. If you want to increase the difficulty, like for instance, instead of a river, that's a mountain space now. If you wanted to increase the difficulty of your game or change up the way this race works. So this is basically just a race to St. Louis all the way to Fort Clatsop. I should also say that each player is going to come with their own little player board here. They're going to start off with 1 of each of these resources. Now, you can do differently where the game says, hey, you can just take 3 random resources from a bag, or you can have the players decide which 3 resources they want, but when you're playing the game for the first time, you should start with 1 of each of these resources. Also, each player will have 1 Indian that will go right there on their board. Now, they'll also start with a generic deck of cards, and every player starts with the same 6 cards in the game, and you can see by the color there and the emblem what they are. Other players have the same type of cards. You can see on the back their emblems, which tell you for what player it is. Whoop, that was backwards there. But if you look, all of the artwork, even though the cards are the same, the artwork is different for each player. And these are actually real characters that Lewis and Clark encountered or had on their team during their journey through America. So this is really awesome. The actions are the same for all 6 cards, no matter what the art looks like here. These are the cards you'll start off in your hand. Of course, you can get additional ones here too. So this is half worker placement and half card management. How the worker placement action happens. For 1 action, you may take your Indian and place him anywhere on this board and collect those actions. So for instance, if you place them here, okay, and there's only 1 spot for that Indian there. Whenever it's a full circle, only 1 spot. Whenever it's a half circle like these 2, that means it's all. As many Indians as you want to can be placed here and here. But anyway, you place an Indian here, you get your choice of 2 fur or 2 wood. Place an Indian there and you get 1 equipment and 1 wood. If someone would place an Indian here, they get 1 buffalo and 1 fur. If someone placed an Indian here, they would get 2 wood and they would exchange 2 wood and get 1 of these canoes. Canoes are really fast ways where you can travel up river. If they were to place an Indian here, they would exchange 3 types of different resources. So meaning maybe 1 wood, 1 fur, 1 equipment, or 1 meat meat, 1 fur, and 1 equipment, whatever it is. Any combination of 3 different resources, and they could get a horse. Horses are how you travel through the mountain areas of the game. If they were to place an Indian here, they'd pay 1 meat, or buffalo, and then they would get to activate any other player's card that they have already played from their hand. All played cards will be out on the board next to the player's area, and if you played your Indian there, you can pay 1 meat and activate that other player's card. There are 2 spaces here you can put Indians on, and for exchange of 3 wood, you can pick up one of these 2 tiles. Now, these 2 tiles can do different things. This one lets you carry 2 more equipment, or instead, if you wanted to flip it over, it could carry 5 extra equipment with a small penalty attached, and I'll get to what that means in a minute. Or instead of getting the canoe, you could get maybe another space for an Indian. This one gives you a space for 1 extra Indian. This one gives you a space for 3 more Indians with, again, a small penalty, which I'll talk about in a minute. So any Indians tokens would go there, tiles would go there. Any equipment tiles would probably go over here. And so you can see your board can really stretch out really long in the game. But that's how you get those 2 types of tiles that you'll play on your board. Now, here, this little area here, if you play one here, you can get rid of 3 cards in your hand. Remember, this is also deck management here, so you may want to cull your deck a little bit. There may be cards you just don't want, and if so, you place it in there, get rid of 3 cards, but whenever you do that, you have to discard all the cards in the side here, and then deal out 5 more. How it works, that's one of the actions, is placing your Indian out there. Now, when you place your Indian out there, you cannot get him back. He is lost. There's a card you can play to get Indians back, but at the end of the round, unless you play that particular card, you're not getting any of your Indians back. So the second thing, and a very important action you can do, is play a card. Now, when you play a card, at first it seems kind of weird, but it's very simple to learn. As you see, I'm going to go through the first 4 powers because they're the easiest to describe here. This one gives you an equipment, 1 equipment. This one gives you 1 meat. This one gives you 1 fur. This one gives you 1 wood. How to activate these? Well, you see it's a 1. So on the back of these cards are these little Indian tokens here. So Indian emblems here. What you'd have to do, I'd have to play this card, but I'd need to power it with another card. So meaning I need to flip another card around so it can have a power of 1. Now when I do that, I will get 1 equipment. Now, if you see the little diagram here that has left and right, this means that if another player has played a card with this same emblem on it, the gray emblem on it, you can also get extra, in this case, equipment. So for instance, let's say another player, they had played this card here, and this card was over to your player's left. So maybe they were over here, and they had played that one. Okay, so now it's your turn to play this one. Now, what you would get is you would get, for 1 action, you get 1 equipment here, and a 2nd equipment here. So you'd actually get 2 equipment from the pool there and add it to your supplies here. So I could do it that way. Now, if there was a 3 or 4 player game, the player to your right, you could also, if they had any equipment markers, get that equipment as well. Now, it is possible to get more equipment or more food or fur or some supply more than what you have room for. If that's the case, you can stop. You don't have to take all the supplies that you are qualified to get. You can only take what you want. Or if you want to take more, you just start jetting off other things from your board, like throwing into the river there and putting them in there. That's if you carry more, if you want to get more resources than what you have room for. That's how these cards are played. So again, it kind of forces you, once you play 1 card, this card, I won't get meat this turn because I had to use it to power this card. Or maybe I used one of these cards to power this card. So even though you're playing all the cards in your hand, you're not necessarily using all their special abilities. Another way to power a card is, let's use this again. Let's say I was getting some wood here. I could use, and if you see this, the number on here shows how many Indians it costs to power that card, but it also has 2 emblems on it. So if I actually powered up the wood here, I would get, and as you see, this is a wood emblem too, 2 wood for every Indian I had on here. So that's 2, 4. I get 4 wood on here. And again, using that rule to the left or right, if I play this card, he has a wood token too, so I'd actually get 3 wood for every Indian I have on this card. So I get 3, 6. Now another thing you can do with, let me see, you have an Indian on your player board, you can take this Indian and help power up a card there. Now you can't have a power bigger than 3 in the game, but this one would let me activate this card 3 times, which would be really awesome. And at the end of the round, or at the end of the turn when you decide to camp, you will take back all your cards in your hand and you'll return any Indians on your card back onto your player board, unlike the main board where they have to stay there. So that's really neat too. Now, speaking of this card here, this card lets you get Indians back from the board. What you do, of course, you play this, you need a power of 2. So I would, if I had this power of 1, I could put the 1 behind it and then add my little Indian to charge it. Now, even though I have 2 Indians, remember it's a power of 2, I can only do this action once because it costs 2 actions to do it. Now, could I put 2 cards behind this person? No, you can't. It'll only be 1 card to activate. If you need extra oomph, you could put an Indian there. Now, if I had another Indian and it made a difference, here it wouldn't make a difference. I could power it again if I needed it. But of course, a power of 3, when it takes 2 to do the action, I wouldn't be able to do. So anyway, I did it like that and I powered the Indian. How that works is, first off, you take all the Indians on the board, and usually there'd be an Indian right here, remember at the start of the game, and you take all the Indians that have been played and you put them in the middle. And you can grab some or all of the Indians and put them on your player board in their areas. And then when you do that, you have to bring out another Indian from the wigwam over here and put them here in the next starting player thing, so if next time someone played that, they at least get 1 Indian. Also, and this is a very, very, very forgotten rule here in all of our games, it has an X right here at the bottom of that card. That means you boot out the bottom card on the track there, and then move, when that's done, you shift all these down 1 and then deal out another card. Again, this rule gets forgotten more times than any of the rules in this game. But anyway, that's how you can get Indians from the player board back into your personal board and maybe get more Indians. Remember, an Indian can be an action, or playing a card can be an action. Now, the other base card, and these are all just the base cards that come with everyone, is the travel card. You'll be using this one a lot. Of course, he has to be powered by 1, so you put 1 Indian there. However, if he had 2 or 3 Indians, like now I have multiple Indians, if I wanted to, I could put it 1, 2 like that and have, activate this 3 times. What this does, it allows you to travel up the river or through the mountains. For instance, for every buffalo I pay, I can move 2 spots up the river. So let's say I did this. I charge this 3 times, all right? What I do is I pay 1 of my meat, so I pay that back to the supply, and I would move up 1, 2. Like that. Well, 1, 2, like that. And since I powered up 3 times, if I had any other meat, I could play it. Or if I had a canoe, let's say earlier I had a canoe, I could pay this canoe and move 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, I'm really moving up that thing. And you pay horses only to move through mountains. You can move through 2 spaces per horse. So this is how you're going to travel through the game. There are a few free actions you can do besides playing cards or placing Indians out on here on the main board. One of your free actions can be, before or after your turn, buy one of these cards. And the cards are very simple to read. First off, you have to pay the amount of equipment equal to the power of the cards. For instance, this number 1, it only costs 1 equipment. Up here, that's a power of 3, that would cost 3 equipment. Now, you would also have to pay, in addition to equipment, fur. And on the board, it has printed, the top card costs 5 fur, then it goes down, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, at any time to get a discount on equipment, not fur, but on equipment, you may discard a card from your hand. Maybe I don't need this card anymore. I can throw him to the discard pile and get a one-time -1 equipment on one of these people. So maybe I really wanted this guy, but only have 1 equipment, or I have 3 equipment. Let's say I really wanted, well, I had 2 equipment, let's say, but I wanted that guy with 3 equipment, all right, and somehow I have 5 fur. So I could discard one of my cards, which would count as a discount of 1. Now, can I discard 2 cards and get a discount of 2 equipment? No. You can only discard 1 card for a one-time discount. Each round you can do that, though. So maybe I can do this one and get this guy for just 1 fur instead of 1 fur and 1 equipment. Or if you have the equipment, you pay the 1 equipment and 1 fur, and then you pick him up and put him in your hand. He goes in your hand immediately. You can play him, on your next turn or on your current turn if you did this before you started doing your action. Now, once that happens, all of these cards would shift down and you deal another card out right there in that spot. The other free action you can do is once you finish playing all your cards, and I should also mention, by the way, to power up a card, let's say I just have this card in my hand. I want to power it up, but I don't have another card. Well, you can always place an Indian on it and power it on its own, which is kind of neat. So at the end of your turn, what you're going to do is, after all these cards have been played, and they'll be laid out on your player board here, and let me just kind of show you. Once you do that, then you are going to camp for the night. When you camp for the night, a few things are going to happen. First off, you're going to take all the cards back into your hand. Well, first off, I should say, before you take the cards back in your hand, you're going to put the Indians back here. So one Indian would go here, the other Indians would go in this spot. And then you're going to add up, and let's say we had some extra equipment, because we've been gathering equipment this round, and we had just various equipment in our thing. And now we're going to see how many spaces we have to move back down the river. Depending on how big your party and how much equipment you're carrying, you're also going to have to move backwards. So for instance, any cards that are left in your hand, flip them over, and that costs 1 time. That's what that is. It's called time. Time moves you backwards. So let's say for some reason I just couldn't play this card, so I have to move back 1 because I had 1 card left in my hand when it was time to camp. I also would, as you see here, any equipment here costs 1 time, whether it be 1 or 3. So because of that, I have to go back another 1. After that, any equipment you have in this third boat, that's going to cost you per cube. And that's what this little emblem means. So I would go back 2 more spaces. 1, 2. Oh no. And now this Indian's free, but however many Indians you have here would cost you 1 more space per Indian. So here I go again, 1, 2. Oh, dadgummit. I am back in St. Louis. This did not work out well for me. Now again, this is kind of why you would want some of these extra ones. This would cost you 0 time. If you flipped it over, you could fit 5 in here and it would only cost you 1 time. So like I said, a small penalty, but much better than putting equipment in that one. Same thing with the Indians. I had to move back 2 there. Now if I had to use this one, I would have had to move back no time. If I were to use this, I could have put both these Indians here and only move back 1 time instead of 2. So that's what those tiles can help you with again. Now, let's say I did that, and later on, instead of going back those 2 spaces, I had to stop. I was up here, and let's say I had to move back here. What I do is I take my camp marker, and I put it right next to where I am. Now there is a rule when traveling, and what that means is if you're going forward up the river, let's say yellow's turn to move and they had to move 2 spaces, 1, 2. They cannot stay on the same space as another player. Only in St. Louis could they have done that. So in this case, they'd have to hop over him and do theirs. So even though they only got a movement of 2, they would actually get to move 3. Now, the exact opposite can be true as well. Once they set up camp and they're going backwards, let's say yellow players setting up camp and they lost 2 time. Well, they're going to go, well, 3 times, let's say. 1, 2, 3. Well, they cannot stay on the same place as another player, so they have to go back 1. So instead of their camp being equal to the orange player, their camp would be 1 behind them. Boo, that sucks. So you can see you're going to do a lot of moving up and then moving back down based on how much equipment and how big your party is. Now I do want to say one other thing here. If your camp, let's say my camp was here and I moved up here, but then I had to move back 3. 1, 2, 3. Does that mean my camp goes backwards? No. You can go backwards, but your camp will never go backwards. Once you set up camp in that spot, it stays there until you camp higher up the river or into the mountains and so on and so forth. So your camp will never move backwards, it will only move forwards. Even though you can continue to move backwards if you have too much equipment or too big of a party going on this expedition. Now, there are 4 promo cards that you can get that are not based off historic characters. This one, which you can get off the website of the publisher, this is actually the creator of the game right here, the designer. He put himself in the game there, so you can buy this off their website. These are other character cards that you can get on the BGG store. These are just promos here, and you can get all 3 in 1 pack here, and they're just other, I think they're game designers here. I know that one, Uwe Rosenberg, right? But these are just other cards you can add to your deck if you want to. Now the game ends when someone gets to Fort Clapsic and they are able to set up camp there. First player who does that wins the game. Final thoughts, what do I think about the game? Well, folks, I am a history major, and I love games about history. That is why I freaking love this game. It's great. It's historically accurate. In fact, every card besides those 4 promo designer cards are actual historical characters that were on the travels of Lewis and Clark. Now, I read a novel about them, a young adult novel, years ago. I hardly remember anything about it, but I'm pretty sure all those characters I read about were in this game. If you are a school teacher, this is a must. If you are a history lover, this is a must. If you suffer from analysis paralysis, you may want to steer clear. Now, I heard this complaint about a lot of people. In fact, this is what I've been looking at this game for months. I was like, man, I'm a history major. I love it. But it says people with AP should not play it. It's like, oh man, that's half my gaming group. And so I finally went ahead and just got it because I just loved everything about the aspect of the game. And I said, well, analysis paralysis, be darned, you know, I'll go ahead and get it anyway. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Now, to be honest, it says, hey, 30 minutes per player. Wrong. 45 minutes per player. Now, even me, who does not suffer from AP, I even froze up a couple of times going, oh my gosh. And not because it's hard or complicated, there's just so many choices. What do you do? Do I play this card now, or do I hold out and hope that someone else plays a card with that emblem so I can get more of those goods? There's a million chances. By the way, you will make the wrong decision more than once. You know, make that card play and then be like, why'd I do that? I should have waited because I knew he had to play that card. I would have gotten more if I'd have waited. That's okay. The game is awesome. It's not that hard to figure out. Like I said, the reason why there's analysis paralysis is because there's a lot of choices. But the game is fun. And for that downtime when someone's suffering from analysis paralysis, may I suggest you start working on your own game plan. Like I was starting pairing off cards, looking at where I could place Indians, look at, you know, I want to do this, 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 and this. And if someone made a move, I'd be like, ooh, maybe I want to save that for later. I already had my cards laid out kind of face down on how I wanted to play them. And so that's what you can do. When you do that, there is zero downtime in this game. Now, like I said, it did take us a couple of hours, which usually for a game of this little, it shouldn't take that long. But everyone in my gaming group absolutely loved the game, and I did too. You can get this for super cheap. And like I said, for teachers, it's a must. For history buffs, it's a must. And then after that, it's up to you whether you would like it or not. But for me, awesome game, well worth your time. All right, folks, that's all I have for now. Until next time, game on.